Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Mass Communication 305. Today, we're going to be talking about Chapter 2, Part 2, which will go over a specific writing strategy that uses situation, audience, and message to help you develop and craft your writing. If you'll remember from our media apprehension scale that we did earlier in the semester, one of the ways to overcome writing apprehension and gain better writing self-efficacy is to develop writing approaches and practice them. And one of the approaches to media writing is strategy. If you're like a lot of writers, you may sit down when an event happens or a story comes up and not really know where to start. And so writing strategies help you to know where to begin and how to best start and write your story. Professional writing strategies allow you to know where to start. They allow you to organize your thoughts and check to make sure that you're doing everything that you need to be doing. They allow your work to be more effective and more efficient. The SAM strategy, or situation, audience, message, which your textbook calls the professional strategy triangle, is one of the strategies that is going to allow you to start your message, think through all of the aspects, and then actually create your message. The first part of the triangle is situation. This allows you to assess the event or the circumstances for which you're writing. So one of the key aspects of this is knowing the purpose of your writing. The first place to start is to know whether you're writing a news or journalism piece or whether you're writing a persuasive piece. If you're in journalism, you're likely writing a news piece. If you're in PR, media relations, advertising, you're going to be writing persuasive pieces. So if you are assessing your situation for news, these are some of the things you have to think about. What is the type of news? Are you trying to do a hard story, like with numbers and information? Are you trying to do a soft feature or human interest story? Is it breaking news? So there's all different types of news that you need to consider, and it's important that you think about which type of news you want to do. The other is facts. What are the key pieces of information that you have that need to be included? Who are the key players, and where are you going to get the information from? Who are your sources? In persuasive writing, you need to assess whether the situation is positive or negative. Are you reacting to a crisis? Are you trying to promote your brand or your organization? So you need to think about whether this is a positive or negative situation. Like journalists, you're going to have to think about who are the key players, and then what are your arguments? What are you trying to get your audience to act upon or believe? You also need to think about whether you want to use rational appeals, which kind of talk about facts, logic, understanding, or are you trying to use emotional appeals, which draw on people's feelings and kind of encourages them to change their mind through emotional reasoning. You also need to understand the structure of your argument, how much rational, how much emotional you're going to use, and any other types of appeals that you may use. Regardless of whether you're writing for news or persuasive writing, you always need to think about what are my employer's main objectives. For news, this is likely going to be your ratings, your social media performance, your website performance, because what are the primary objectives for a news organization? It's to make money, it's to get viewers, it's to inform. And so these are all things you have to consider when you're writing, because you need to know how to meet those goals. The same for persuasive media writing. If you're in PR, for example, what is your employer hoping to get out of this public relations initiative? Are they needing to gain brand loyalty? Are they trying to recruit new people? How can you help them meet these goals? So that's how you address the situation. Let's take an example from recent events. If you weren't aware, the University of Montevallo actually saw an increase in student enrollment for fall of 2020 after the outbreak of COVID-19, while many universities saw declines in enrollment for this semester. So if you were working for a news agency like 3340 and you were trying to assess the situation, you would go through those thoughts that we talked about earlier. For a story like this, you could do it one of two ways. You could do a very facts-driven story where you just provide the enrollment information, or you could feature new students who transferred or started at UM because of circumstances surrounding COVID. So it could be either a hard or soft news story. The facts are likely going to be enrollment numbers as well as the university's safety plan. The key players would be Dr. Stewart, as well as other administrators, faculty, students, and parents. The source of that information would also be those same key players. You're going to have to get the information from administrators, and you may interview any of the faculty, students, and parents in order to get more information. What are the employer's goals in this situation? It's going to be ratings and analytics, right? So for your broadcast story, you're primarily going to want to get facts, but you may want to use some kind of feature in order to kind of get some of that localization effect and really talking to parents and students to kind of inform and make it a little more entertaining for your audience as well. For social, you're most likely going to want to focus primarily on the feature because that's really what drives your ratings. If you were writing for UM's recruiting team, which would be kind of a public relations in order to recruit new students to enroll in the university, in thinking about the situation, this is obviously a positive for the university. Our numbers are up, which means Montevallo is an attractive and safe school. The key players would be administration, faculty, students, and parents, same as the news. And the arguments that you're making here is that the University of Montevallo is safe. We've taken measures above and beyond what other institutions are doing to protect our students during COVID-19. The other argument would be that the University of Montevallo cares and that we provide quality education no matter what the circumstance of life is. These are all things that would drive people to be in favor of enrolling at Montevallo in the future. Rational and emotional appeals could be facts about the safety plan, the increases in numbers, the types of programs that we provide. The emotional appeal would likely be faculty, student, and parent testimonies about what a great place the University of Montevallo is, even during COVID-19. And I would imagine that you would want to structure your argument with both rational and emotional appeal, and likely in multimedia formats with both facts and statistics, as well as some visuals of the campus. In terms of the audience of our SAM strategy, you are thinking about who are the people that are going to be reading, hearing, or seeing your message. The questions you're asking yourself here are the same, whether you're writing for journalism or persuasive writing. Who is your audience? What are their predispositions? What do they already believe? What are some of the demographic factors that are relevant, such as race, gender, socioeconomics? What are some of the psychographic factors that are relevant? What are their hobbies? What do they like? What do they pay attention to? What is their life stage like, for instance? How is my audience going to interpret the message? How do you predict them receiving the message, and what kind of reactions will they have to that message? Will it be favorable? Will it be mixed? Will it be negative? What kinds of reactions are you expecting? And then you need to think about how credible is my organization to my audience? What barriers do I have to overcome in order to persuade them that I am a trustworthy source of this information? So if you're ABC 3340 working on this story, your audience is going to be either your television audience, if you're watching like the 4:30 or 5 o'clock newscasts. The demographics of that show are that it's primarily parents. A lot of stay-at-home, either moms or dads, tend to watch the 4:30 and 5 o'clock shows because they're earlier in the day when people who are working are still at work. The demographic factor of gender is really important for these early shows because women are the majority of the audience. It's also going to be a lot of middle-aged, kind of in your 35 to early 50s is the primary age of that show. In terms of your social audience, it's going to tend to be younger than your broadcast audience. So you would get college age to early adults. And depending upon the platform, you're going to have people who are expecting either more facts or more features. Facts on Twitter, features on Facebook. What are your audience's predispositions? Well, we know that most people in this demographic would love their family. They would want to protect them. Many people currently across our nation, but especially here locally, have a fear of COVID-19 and wanting to provide a safe environment. But they also, on the alternative side, want to get back to normal, quote unquote, normal life, and trying to make changes in their lifestyle to be able to accommodate COVID properly. You're also going to have a local audience here. So you're going to have people who are familiar with Montevallo, who may take pride in Montevallo, and you may even have some alums. And of course, everyone is interested by money. So the economics of the situation are important too. What are the demographic factors that are relevant? Of course, you're going to want to consider your audience's gender, race, economic situation, their occupations, and their education levels. And what psychographic factors would be relevant for news? Well, affiliation with or other local colleges would be important to consider. So again, you don't want to like bash the University of Alabama because we know we have UA alums watching in the audience. So you kind of have to temper that pride with pride for other universities locally. You're going to want to really target audience members who are in the life stage, who have late high school children or college age children. And then those that have attitudes of fear of COVID, but also wanting to return back to normal life. How is my audience going to interpret the message? I think most of this news seems positive. However, I think there might be a degree of skepticism to some of these numbers. So you're going to want to address like, why are the numbers going up? And is that really a good thing or a bad thing? So you're going to want to dig in a little bit more there as a journalist. How credible is your organization? What barriers do you have to overcome? Generally speaking, local news organizations tend to be trusted by local audiences pretty heavily. For instance, if you grew up watching 3340, you're going to watch 3340 as an adult. You trust them, they're part of your daily lives. So you're already a credible news organization, but you might have to overcome some barriers of media bias as you're writing, so be considerate of that. If you're writing this as a PR piece for your audience, you're going to want to target an audience who are families with college age or high school children, or the young adults who are making those decisions. That's primarily who recruiting would be targeting. What are their predispositions? Again, they love their family. They want them to be safe. They have a fear of COVID, but want to move on with normal life. And they want to have value in their university. What demographic factors would be relevant here? Well, gender, race, economics, occupation, educational level, again, all those same things, and the same with the psychographic factors as well. I think your audience is primarily going to interpret this message as positive news because it is positive news for Montevallo, but again, they might be skeptical because the information is coming directly from the organization. So they're going to ask, are they changing the numbers to look more positive than they really are? So you may have to build or bridge some of those barriers of trustworthiness through appeals by addressing concerns about safety, as well as uncertainty about what the future holds. All of those things should be things that you're writing about as you're writing for recruiting. In that last piece of the triangle message for RCM strategy, you're going to want to write to meet the demands of both the situation and audience. So you're going to need to think about what the end product looks like. And that's for both news and persuasive writing. You have to consider the situation and the audience together. You need to envision what the final story is going to look like. What type of media is it? What pieces would be needed for you to accomplish that? You're going to need to learn more about what you're crafting and then do research as well. You need to refocus your thinking throughout. You're going to want to make more precise. You're going to want to make it to the point. And particularly for persuasive writing, you're not going to need to come back to your appeals time and time again. And then you're going to write, and you're going to write some more, and you're going to edit, and then you're going to write some more until the piece is done. So if we're 3340, the message side of this is going to look different depending upon what that final piece looks like. Again, every journalist is likely going to have to do a broadcast story, a social media piece, and a digital web story. But even those look different with themselves, right? But altogether, taking in the situation and the audience, you're going to want an informative piece that talks about safety, that talks about the economics, that talks about local pride and addressing concerns about COVID-19. You're going to need to do research on UM's numbers and their safety protocols versus what other local universities did and why Montevallo was more successful than those other universities. In refocusing your thinking, the primary thing to think about for journalism is making it concise and conversational in your writing. And then as you write, you need to consider aspects of style, format, entertainment, education, accuracy, and speed. So here's what ABC 3340 actually did. Here is their story. So they have a digital web piece. They actually came and took pictures, and they have a photo gallery. And here's the story that ran on the 4:30 newscast. Oh, and we get an ad. But you can see that even for one seemingly small story, they had to write the piece itself. They had to link to other research about local universities. They had to take pictures and make those into a photo gallery. And so there are many aspects of the format that need to be considered. I also know for a fact that 3340 tweeted this out, put it on its Facebook page. So there are lots of different things they had to do. So they actually have a live shot and package, which is a lot of time to devote to this story. It shows its level of importance, which I think is great for Montevallo in particular. But 3340 does a nice job of presenting the story in a multimedia format. Now, what if you're UM's recruiting team? What do you do for this story? Well, considering the situation and the audience together, you're really going to want to persuade about the safety and value of the University of Montevallo. The final story, you're going to have things like tweets, press releases, maybe put out a little video about it. In terms of research, you not only need to follow your own numbers, but also other universities, and you're going to want to do some pre-campaign research, speaking to your students, speaking to parents, and speaking to incoming students about their concerns, so that as you're refocusing your thinking and your appeals, you're answering the concerns that people are telling you within your research. As you're writing, you always need to come back to these rational and emotional appeals. You have to think, am I persuading someone about what we're talking about? So here are the pieces that Montevallo did just last week on this. So the first is just a digital web story that I believe was also sent as a press release. So that 3340 story likely came from the press release that you see here on the left. Also, the university went and they tweeted it out. They put it on their Facebook page. They put it on their Instagram page. And so these are just some of the things that the recruiting team did, and they'll probably continue to incorporate this rise in enrollment in future pieces as well. Something that I want to point out, look at the similarities between the press release intro and lead and the news press release the news story that came out. Like I said, the public relations team at probably drove a lot of the news that came out about this situation. You can see they're very similar. If you continue reading down the press release, ABC 3340 actually uses the quotes from the press release that Dr. Stewart gave. So the PR team and persuasive appeals team does have a large influence on news, which I think both journalists and PR professionals need to think about. So that is the SAM strategy, also called the professional strategy triangle in your textbook. It's a great way for you to think about efficient writing and getting you started as you're trying to make media professional writing and appeals. So now that you've watched this video, I want you to go into your discussion post for today. It will be on the SAM strategy. Then you'll have your first critique assignment where you're going to critique a piece for its ability to assess situation, audience, and message. That will be due next Thursday. And then you can focus in on our grammar for the day, which is going to be passive and active voice, by watching that video.